Thank you very much, Dr. Mathabathe. That was very interesting and raised some additional questions and possibilities, because up to now we've been focusing on school education. And it's good to hear from a tertiary practitioner what university teachers need to know and what the possibilities are. Thank you so much. Right, are there any questions? Just see if there's something in the chat. Okay, from Gordon Branston. Thank you for explicitly highlighting the pathway towards a whole of society approach with reference to the SDGs and systems thinking. It reminds me of a research paper with substantial contribution, a more systemic and reflexive way of thinking and acting, bearing in mind that our world is one of continuous change and ever-present uncertainty. This suggests we cannot think about sustainability in terms of problems that are out there to be solved, or in terms of inconvenient truths that need to be addressed. Instead, we need to think in terms of challenges to be taken on, in the full realization that things have changed. Instead, we need to think in terms of challenges to be taken on, in the full realization that as soon as we appear to have met the challenge, things will have changed and the horizon will have shifted once again. Yes, this is indeed one of the things that is often raised in terms of our teaching is it still appropriate for the kind of society that the young people go into and the kind of careers that they'll be following. Things are changing so fast that you can't keep up with the technological changes. And with the technological changes, the young people change. It's like you were referring to your child, knowing your cell phone before you do. It's like almost like an innate thing that they've absorbed from the environment, from being born. It's just uncanny how the children relate to technology in ways that we can hardly understand as older people. Right, there's another posting in the chat. Transformative, transgressive social learning, rethinking higher education pedagogy in terms of systemic global dysfunction. And there is a link to the article. Sounds very interesting indeed. Please copy it from the chat if you are interested, and we can look at providing it on our website afterwards. What do you think are the implications for classroom teaching, for school classroom teaching? Are there any of these things that we can actually implement at that level?
I believe so, Yani, especially at the pedagogical level. I know we have resource constraints, especially in the poorer schools, but I think nothing stops you from implementing a pedagogical approach. And with technology coming so naturally and easily for our students. I know there's this whole thing about allowing cell phones in school environments, but sometimes it comes to an advantage where we do not have to print out hard copy worksheets. They can easily be there, because I remember with POGL, the one that we worked on, the teachers were saying, but it's so paper heavy. It has so many worksheets that need to be provided. But imagine what kind of world it would open if we were now we don't have to print out the hard copies, but the fact that the pedagogy itself gives us, it's a golden opportunity to develop the knowledge, the skills, and the values. And if you look at, I'm not trying to promote one pedagogy over the other, but with just giving an example with POGL, where you move from the simple and the familiar to the abstract. They talk about, for example, working out molar ratios and stoichiometry, but the lesson just simply starts with a car, different components of a car put together. You've got wheels, you've got the body, and you ask the students, how many cars can you produce? And they realize that some of the components are in excess and some are short. And there you've already demonstrated the concept of limiting reagents in a non-threatening way.
Right, yes. It's fantastic. I really like that idea. And we haven't had anyone talking in the past 2 days about systems thinking and how that is valuable in analyzing anything, any situation. Does anyone know of material that is actually suitable for school in that regard, for system to cultivate systems thinking or approaching things holistically?
Yeah. I think still while we're waiting for colleagues to come forward, I think there's also now an increase in the research. So a simple Google Scholar search could also just lead to some of the literature and the resources that are available. There's certainly a growing interest there.
Fantastic. Sharanjit Shan?
Okay, in terms of systems thinking at the school level, the best that I've done over the past 4 or 5 years is to look at the form of thinking and systems thinking, because thinking has moved from Newtonian thinking to quantum thinking in the past 4 or 5 years. And people who, in my humble view, have done the best work, and I've attended a lot of their courses and implemented a lot of that into the center's work, would be Gibbs. Gibbs have held courses on systems thinking. I can't remember the name of the person. It's Colleen. I can't remember the surname, but she does the most brilliant workshops on systems thinking. Other than that, probably the best I have learned was in my life coaching experience, and internet has lots and lots of very good examples of systems thinking within life in general, and you can adapt them to schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharanjit. I don't think there's anything in the curriculum that points to systems thinking, which is a problem because, if you really want to integrate the learning areas and solve problems in a real life context, you need systems thinking. The children actually need to learn that as a skill, I think.
And again, you've just triggered a thought in my mind. When mathematics is done across the curriculum, then it brings in systems thinking automatically. Yeah. So if you pick examples from mathematics in geography, and a few years ago, we were funded very well by Old Mutual to look at mathematics in the environment and mathematics within climate change. And that brought in a whole lot of teachers together to see how geography teachers can support the issue of exploration of climate change. Maths and science, of course, that's automatic. Life orientation, even in terms of your habits, your daily habits and what you eat and what you consume. So yes, you just triggered a thought in my head. Thank you, Ansi.
Has that project been completed?
Yes, and we produced a kit and we called it SEED, in fact, which was supposed to be an acronym for something or the other, but basically it meant environment across the curriculum. Okay. But us being the Math Center, a whole lot of focus was with maths and science, and we produced a kit. I remember now, it was during Professor Kader Asmal's time. In our schools in South Africa, mathematics is not looked at across the curriculum, which is very sad. Very.
No, it is very sad indeed. There were some some rumors or noises by the department in relation to project work. And I think there's still an intention that the children must engage in project work, but specifically in modeling, in mathematical modeling.
Mathematical modeling, yes.
Yes. So I don't know how much has happened. I mean, if you can enlighten us in that regard.
Well, I haven't seen anything happen, to be very honest, because the last 2 years, the manner in which my view on maths curriculum is, I love it. I love the aims within the CAPS document because it takes me into history of mathematics, history of physical science. If I had my way, in history lessons, I'll teach history of maths and history of science. And there are some wonderful, wonderful books out there to help you. But we ourselves engage in a lot of project work through a campaign which has been going on for years, and we call it STEM for Engineering. And within that, you have to bring maths, you have to bring science, you have to bring technology. But the design that my manager, Mamoho, she is present in this meeting, always chooses, has to connect to the community. So you can develop water purifiers or you can check how to save electricity, but it brings the community in and it brings their habits, how you save on this and how you save on that, and life orientation. So it kind of becomes a systems thinking, because in terms of how we use electricity as a community, we need to think together. So in this project that we do, STEM for Engineering, now we call it STEAM for Engineering. We even call it, paradoxically, steaming ahead. It's just make it fun, as much fun as you can for the kids. So from the department, I honestly can't say.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Sharanjit.
Sorry, could I, sorry, Yancy, could I just make a comment?
Please, Garth.
Thanks. So I'm based in Scotland. I'm South African living abroad, and I recently undertook a course in education for sustainable development through Gothenburg University. It was when Brexit hadn't quite occurred. And this was very interesting, and I'm bringing this up simply because the pedagogy around systems thinking and the critical importance of introducing that to teachers. It was one of the projects that I was involved in. Indeed, I produced a project proposal. It was proposed, it was essentially aimed at primary schools because its systems thinking was always thought to be of a higher educational level. And this particular project was a proposed transformative reflexive whole primary school and ultimately a community co-learning approach to learning for sustainability by using plastic dinosaurs to introduce systems thinking and sustainable development goals. And Professor Walsh, as well as Latsika, the author that I mentioned in the previous link in the chat line, both of them are eminent academics in this particular area of research. And it was really quite transformative, the way in which it essentially unfolds is to deconstruct, and in this case, a dinosaur, which is essentially fossil fuels made from plastic. And it captures the imagination of young people because it's essentially an animal, a huge animal, a very ferocious animal. And you can compare that to all sorts of things like consumerism that we are, obviously with the crises that we have that are also unfolding. And so it gives teachers the opportunity to dismantle or to engage with very young students who, holding a dinosaur, can make those connections. Young people are incredibly intuitive and they are very quick learners. And at this age, they're also very informed, especially if one uses the right type of tools. And so to take a dinosaur and then to deconstruct it into its many parts, I'm referring to a plastic dinosaur, one can then move into the digital virtual world using technologies, but at the same time also leading to the manufacturing process and all the social injustices that occur when one is producing items, whether it's clothing or whether it's different types of consumer goods. And so you're engaging young people with social injustices and social justice issues. And so, you know, I'm not going to labor the point, but all I'm really putting across is that this is a critical skill. Systems thinking is incredibly useful. And it's, you know, as you've mentioned, it's not actually essentially taught. At schools, we often taught reductionist thinking, which is very narrow-minded in a sense, with all due respect. And even within the context of our academic studies, we constantly narrow it down. So we have PhDs, which is essentially a pinpoint, incredibly valuable. But at the same time, we lose sight of the multidisciplinarity that's critical to the future of our children and the next generation. So I'd just like to make that point. And if you like, I can forward on the project proposal, because it's something that I can always, it's from myself to, essentially it was to my wife, who was a school teacher, and she introduced it to teachers within our own school, and it was incredibly useful. I'll just leave it there. Okay, thanks.
Wonderful, Gordon. Thank you very much for that contribution. And yes, do send us the project proposal, whether in link form or actual. Would you mind if we put that on our website for sharing?
Yes, by all means. It was a, it was essentially a project that was meant to engage within the public sphere, because something like that is incredibly useful, and I can see many ideas coming from it. And in fact, it can result in many research proposals. The pedagogy of visual disturbance, for example, we're all experiencing it. You know, and these have pathways into well-being, mental health issues, and STEM subjects play a huge role. You know, it's one of the, as it were, the importance of engaging in STEM subjects is because we're relying on technologies to a large extent to get us out of the many fixes that we often paint ourselves into. And so, yes, I'd be very, very honored to pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a post in the chat, today's problems, from Sylvester Johnson. Today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. Quick fix solutions of today can make problems and more stress in the future. Personal mastery, mental models, building shared vision from learning and systems thinking is so needed, even at school level. Thank you very much for that comment.